There are many characters in the world of Ivalice, many of whom have backstories that are interconnected with others over the course of the game, which I believe adds to the overall dynamic of the story and something I find to be an important factor of the chemistry between the characters. This was something I enjoyed about Final Fantasy XII. While the story wasn't as easy to follow, knowing the backstory of the characters before their involvements in the game is good, as the dots got connected throughout the story and I learned to appreciate the characters even more along with the gameplay elements of the game. As a fan of both medieval and sci-fi elements, I found myself enjoying Final Fantasy XII to the point where I have selected it as the second game I would cover on this channel. That, and I was too young to enjoy the 90s era of Final Fantasy before 10 came out. With that being said, today's video will be another entry to the Preludes of Ivalice, where we explore the backstories of various characters and events that led to the storyline of Final Fantasy XII. Following the entry of Bosch von Ronsenberg, who was covered in the first entry, we will be looking at the next character in the miniseries. A character who often calls himself the leading man of this story, Balthier was someone who did not lack charisma, often using his wits and confidence to navigate conversations between friends and even foes. While we see all of that during the events of the game, our main focus is to look at his upbringing and what led to his implementation in the game. So without further ado, let us delve into the backstory of Balthier. For those who are not aware, Balthier is not actually his real name. In fact, Balthier was born Famran Bonanza 22 years before the events of Final Fantasy XII, as the son to Sidolphus Bonanza, the same mad scientist who is often seen talking to no one, which is eventually revealed to a spiritual being that kind of looks like a sword. This in fact makes Balthier an Arcadian. While his father shows no compassion towards Balthier during the game, the same cannot be said for the young Famran, as we see in this image that Dr. Sid truly loved his son. So much so that he made sure that the young boy would become a high-ranking judge in Arcadia's ranks. Throughout his time as a judge, Famran likely worked close to his father or within his vicinity, as he was able to observe his movements and changes in behavior, especially when his father suddenly became obsessed with the idea of taking the reins of history back into the hands of man and seemingly speaking to himself while looking to a particular direction with no one there after his return from a trip to Girovegan 6 years before the event of the game. It was around this time that Dr. Sid began to neglect his son due to this obsession, and upon seeing his father's descent into madness, Famran defected from the ranks of Arcades and pursued the life of a sky pirate, and changed his name to Balthier, to further distance himself from his previous life as an Arcadian judge, as well as cut ties with his mad scientist father. Along the way, he stole the prototype of a fighter airship that he eventually upgraded and named the Strahl, which is said to look very different from the original look of the airship, which was likely a metallic gray that would resemble a typical Arcadian ship, to the more colorful brown and light color scheme of the Strahl. At some point after becoming a sky pirate, he met his partner, the Viera Fran, who was also an outcast from her own land similar to himself, and they worked together to steal treasures using the Strahl and their abilities, making enemies and placing bounties on their heads, bounties that the likes of Bagamnon would capitalize on throughout his constant pursuit of the duo during the events of the game. One of their treasure hunts eventually leads them to Rabanastor's treasury stash, where they come across a young boy holding a very shiny stone. Taking a keen interest in the stone, but unaware of the stone's identity at the time, Balthier demands the trinket from the boy, leading the latter to a hasty retreat and a subsequent chase between the trio. As Balthier and Fran were closing in on the boy and the stone, Imperial soldiers surrounded them and had to escape via their motorcycle. As they make their escape, the vehicle is caught in an explosion and the three fall, crashing in the Garm-Scythe waterways, marking the beginning of their involvement in Final Fantasy XII. And that ends this entry of Preludes to Ivalice miniseries of Final Fantasy XII lore. The backstory with Balthier was a rather interesting one, as he was set by his father to become a high-ranking judge of one of Ivalice's mightiest armies, but decided to defect due to seeing the madness of his father upon his return from Girovegan. A similar analogy could be seen for Auron, who was also set to hold a high position in the religion of Yevon, but turned away from the religion when he refused to take the hand of the daughter of a high-ranking priest in marriage. Let me know what you think of Balthier. Did you find him to be an interesting character in the game? Is he your favorite character? What would the storyline of Final Fantasy XII be like if he had maintained his role as a judge instead of leaving his father? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know which character or event you'd like me to cover next. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you wish to see more Final Fantasy content. Other than that, this is Enzo signing out, and I will see you all soon.